Hey yo, it's your boy J3mri's, and welcome to the Wrestle Watch podcast. So I'm gonna be doing this. I'm gonna try to do one or two a week. I'd like to do a SmackDown and a Raw every week. So I'd like to do 2 episodes a week, but I'm just gonna be rewatching an episode of Raw and an episode of SmackDown from the past. I'm gonna be starting in the 2010s because I watched wrestling growing up from like 2010 to 2014, and then I stopped when my dad passed, and then I started watching like a year ago, well 2 years ago at this point. So I'm gonna be rewatching because I want to get caught up on everything that I've missed. So the episode that I chose to start off the podcast with was January 4th, 2010. I'm gonna be picking that week's Raw for now. This is season 18, episode 1. So this episode was guest hosted by Bret Hart. He called out Shawn Michaels because he wanted to bury the hatchet over the whole Montreal screw job. He wanted to get that behind them, which is sick that they actually acknowledged that in story. WWE likes to bury things that they're not proud of. But Shawn Michaels came out, and he said that he believes that Bret deserved what happened to him, but he's ready to move on from that and move on to the future, which I respect the heck out of that. I really thought that Shawn Michaels would bury his feet into the ground, maybe hit him with a quick sweet chin music, but nope. He actually respected him, and I respect the heck out of that. And they ended up actually shaking hands and hugging and having that be over. And then Bret Hart tried to call Vince McMahon to the ring, but Vince McMahon was probably too busy harassing his assistant because he didn't even come out. It cut to an interview backstage. An interviewer was waiting outside of Vince McMahon's dressing room, and when Vince McMahon got to his room, he was like, "What are you doing here?" And the interviewer was like, "Hey, so did you see what Bret Hart just did?" And Vince was like, "No, I was in a meeting," which we all probably know what meeting means now. But, yeah, Vince McMahon ended up saying, if he wants to call me out, I'll call him out later. If we're doing this, we're doing it on my terms, and then you have to wait all the way till the end. After all the matches, SmackDown ends... Not SmackDown, it's Raw. Raw ends with that moment. So, Vince ended up getting interviewed there. And then Michael Cole and Jerry the King Lawler announced that Melina has a serious leg injury due to a house show injury she got, and she's going to be out for a few months, so they're going to be doing an 8-women Divas Championship tournament to see who's going to be the new champion. And it's going to be starting, right now, they say, at that moment. They're like, and that tournament starts now. And then Maurice enters, and the Bellas come out next, and the first match gets started. But I would like to point out the inappropriate comments that Jerry Lawler always made every time a diva entered. This week's inappropriate comments, when the Bellas came out, he said, "The hottest thing since sunburns." And then he also said, "When I see this, I think, way to go, guys. I mean, 2 beautiful Bellas?" And that's just a little iffy, bro. Come on. I mean, I know it was 2010, but still, come on, bro. That's a little... Cool it. Stop being a horn dog. But Brie started really strong in that match. She was taking it to Maurice. But when the momentum shifted, the Bellas tried to pull a little twin magic. And Nikki and her swapped places. But before Nikki could take advantage of the fact that she's fresh in this match, Maurice hit her with her finisher and pinned her right after that, so the twin magic meant nothing. Now, growing up, the twin magic blew my mind. It was insane to me that they could do that, because I was like, holy... you could just look the same. The Usos, I now know, aren't even identical twins, but back in the day, I was convinced that Jimmy and Jey Uso looked exactly the same. I had no clue which was which. So when the Usos would pull the twin magic, my mind was always blown. I was like, how? Oh my god, ref, turn around! It always had me going crazy, dude. Nowadays, knowing they're not identical twins, and I look at them and they're very different, because number one, you could tell their faces are different, but also they tried very hard to make themselves look different, so you could tell, oh, that's main event Jey Uso, that's mid-card Jimmy Uso. But back in the day, that had me fooled hardcore, dude. I never even almost knew which Bella was which. I just knew that they were both constantly pulling the twin magic, and it always had my mind blown. But even though they pulled the twin magic in this one, they lost. And that had me shocked. Because Maurice saw it, but the ref didn't, and I was like, this is crazy. Maurice just lost. There's no way she's going on, but she actually won. And then The Miz came out, who at the time apparently was the U.S. champion, and he says to Maurice that if she ends up winning this tournament, he may call her back. And he says, 2010 is not going to be your year. This decade isn't going to be your decade. This century is not going to be your century. This 2010 is going to be the year of Miz. This decade is the decade of Miz. This century is the century of Miz. This is my time. This isn't your time, which is crazy seeing that they're married and he's just telling his wife, like, this is not your time. This is the time for me to shine. Like, and then he ended up coming out and he joined commentary for the #1 contenders match for his U.S. championship, which was pretty crazy. It was Mark Henry, MVP, Jack Swagger, and who was the fourth? I wrote it down so I didn't forget. But I have like a million notes, so give me a second. It was Mark Henry. Oh, Carlito was the fourth one, which is crazy because the thing is, I don't remember watching Carlito wrestle, so like going back, this is probably the first time I've seen a Carlito match that wasn't current. Now that Carlito just had that street fight on SmackDown on Friday. So it was pretty nuts being like, yo, so that's Carlito, that's what all the hype is. This is pretty epic now that I know what's going on, why people love Carlito. But that match was pretty crazy. You would think that the size and strength behind Mark Henry, he'd be more destructive, but in this match, MVP was very dominant. He just kept yeeting everyone out of the ring, and I guess this was when him and Mark Henry were teammates, because Michael Cole kept pointing out, like, I guess even friendships and teammates don't even matter in a match like this. And MVP won, I think it was a drop kick to Mark Henry that made him, like, flop out of the ring. Yeah, and then Carlito went to, like, tackle him, and he hopped out of the way, and Carlito tackled Jack Swagger out of the ring. It was crazy. But yeah, Carlito was pretty dominant in that match, and he ended up winning that. So he is going to go on to fight The Miz for the U.S. title. I don't know when. But after that match, Miz just did like a 5-second promo being like, you think you could do this? You think you could do what I could do? And then it ended up cutting backstage where we get to see Jericho kind of arguing, being like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We have a match tonight. And it turns out that a month before it, they lost their their undisputed tag titles to DX. And apparently, if Chris Jericho loses this match that he's fighting tonight, if Chris Jericho and Big Show lose, it's going to end up being Chris Jericho has to go back to SmackDown, and Big Show and him are like best buds, so they're both like, I really don't want to go. I really don't want to lose you, man. Please don't lose this match. And Chris Jericho's like, don't worry, man. I've got this under control. I've got a plan. And then he goes to guest host Bret Hart, and he's like, hey, so you know the Montreal Screwjob? You know how you got screwed and you hate Shawn Michaels and you don't like Vince McMahon because they screwed you over? Yeah, well, could you redo that, but help me beat DX? Make yourself the referee tonight, and then when you're the special guest referee, I'll put him in the walls of Jericho, and then you can 1, 2, 3 really fast, and then I'll win. Please. And Bret Hart was like, no, that's behind me. I'm not doing that stuff anymore. I'm not mad about the Montreal Screwjob. What happened, happened. I just want to live my life and keep going on. And Chris Jericho's telling these, like, stories about the past. Like, remember when I was training with your family, man? Remember when this happened? And Bret Hart's just like, no, dude, I'm not doing that. We're not doing this. And he says that he doesn't want to be two-faced like Chris Jericho, which was nuts. I was like, oh my gosh, are we going to get a 2010 version of the Montreal Screwjob? But no, he has more integrity than I thought he would. It was crazy. Yeah, and then it cuts to Triple H and Hornswoggle are at a table covered in Mattel WWE action figures. And Hornswoggle keeps trying to grab the figures, and Triple H keeps slapping his hand and going, no, not now, not yet. And Hornswoggle's all like bummed and keeps trying to grab him. And then Triple H starts talking about how they're cool, and he starts... As he picks them up, he's like, this one's John Cena. And then we get Hornswoggle to, like, in that like voice he did, he's like, I don't know how he made the noises, but, you know, he, like, did the John Cena impression, and then he picked up Stone Cold Steve Austin and Hornswoggle in the way that he didn't talk. He just kind of grunted, does, like, a Stone Cold impression, and then he holds up, like, I forget who the other one was, but he just keeps going with that for a minute, which, that was hilarious. I love Hornswoggle. And then Shawn Michaels came back, and Triple H is like, while you were out there just talking to Bret Hart, doing whatever you were doing, I was back here worrying about our tag titles tonight. And Shawn Michaels was like, how does a table full of toys have anything to do with us defending our tag team titles tonight? And Triple H, like, calls for Santino Marella, who is dressed as Chris Jericho, to enter the room. And Santino does this, like, really bad Chris Jericho impression. And then we have Santino Marella just doing this impression. And Triple H, like, says to Hornswoggle, he, like, points at Santino Marella and he's like, attack! And Hornswoggle jumps off the table full of toys onto Santino, and Santino falls on this couch that was just next to it for some reason, and just starts wailing on Santino, and you just hear Santino screaming while Triple H and Shawn Michaels are just talking about, they're just discussing, like, what they're going to do for their match tonight, and Triple H is like, don't worry, we've got this under control. As you just hear Santino Marella screaming in the background, and then Hornswoggle tackles him behind the couch, and you just see Santino Marella just, like, popping up from behind the couch every so often, and then he goes back under, and you just hear him screaming, and then he pops back up, and then he goes back down, and it's hilarious. And they're just... Triple H and Shawn Michaels are just standing there discussing, like, okay, this is gonna work. This is gonna be it, and it's hilarious. And then Santino deserves to be in the Hall of Fame if he isn't. That man did so much for wrestling in the 2010s, man. That man deserves so much more than he got. From being the man with the shortest time in a Royal Rumble to almost winning a Rumble. Well, actually, he almost won a Rumble, and then the next year he had the shortest entrance, which is crazy. But man deserved more. Man should have won the Rumble when Alberto Del Rio won, but he didn't. But yeah, back to what I was talking about before that. Like Triple H calls Hornswoggle over and he's like, let's go, and then they like start to head out to their match, and then you hear Santino Marella not understanding that DX's thing is suck it, and he's just like, good luck with the sucking. And that's hilarious, man. Santino's the best. I just love when he used to mispronounce everyone's names. When he'd be like, John Cena. Whenever I see John Cena, like, in my head, I'm like, it's John Cena. And whenever I hear Baptista, I'm just like, Baptista. I don't say him right, but Santino's the best, bro. But yeah, then they end up going out for their match. And Triple H ended up telling Hornswoggle, no, you don't get to play with any of the toys unless we win our match tonight. So, you know the stakes are high when Hornswoggle can't play with his action figures unless they win a match. He's gonna find a way. Oh, poor Hornswoggle. They treated him like a kid, but it was hilarious, bro. It really was. But yeah. So, yeah, then DX goes out and enters the ring. You see Shawn Michaels doing his normal thing when he enters, Triple H doing his normal thing, and then Hornswoggle just runs down the ramp as fast as he can, and he gets in the ring with them for a minute, and then he just goes right back to hiding underneath the ring. And the match started off with Big Show and Chris Jericho slapping him around for a good bit. Big Show started off the match and he was just whooping Shawn Michaels, and then he was whooping Triple H, and they were really working him for a bit. But Triple H got the tag, and there was like a million almost Sweet Chin musics that just didn't happen to be. It was pretty crazy. Yeah, but the finish of the match was awesome, because it was Hornswoggle hopped in the ring and he was like in the corner stomping, like doing that thing Shawn Michaels does when he's getting ready to do his Sweet Chin music, while Chris Jericho's like getting off the ground, and then when he goes for the Sweet Chin music, he just gets a huge boot to the face from Chris Jericho, and then Chris Jericho tries to go for the Walls of Jericho on Triple H, and just eats a Sweet Chin music right to the freaking face, dude. Right from Shawn Michaels. He's like passed away instantly. Triple H somehow gets himself up and pins him, gets the 3 count. But that's how did Hornswoggle think that he was gonna Sweet Chin music Chris Jericho? What was he gonna Sweet Chin music his knee? It's probably messed up to joke about that, but that's crazy. But like the stakes for that match, I said earlier, was if Chris Jericho loses this match, he has to go to SmackDown. So Big Show and him won't be able to team up anymore. So Triple H says good riddance, and then Shawn Michaels tells him that he has 2 words for him, and then you hear the audience go, "Suck it!" And then as Chris Jericho's all bummed out, sitting in the ring and slowly getting out and just all sad that he won't be able to tag team with his best friend Big Show, and knowing that Jeri's show is over, you just hear the audience start going, "Na na 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 na, na 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 na, hey hey, goodbye," the entire time that he's slowly walking up the ramp, all bummed that he just lost his tag title opportunity, and he will never get a tag title until DX loses their championships. That was crazy, bro. It must be so nuts to just have thousands of people just chanting at you constantly. But that crowd was on fire the second Chris Jericho lost. Uh, and then it ends up cutting to Randy Orton, and he knocks on Vince McMahon's door. Vince McMahon comes out, and Randy Orton's trying to pitch him on like, hey bro, I can go punt kick Bret Hart for you. I don't mind. That's another legend that I've never got to kill yet. I would love to. And Vince McMahon was like, well, what's in it for you? And Randy Orton said that he is offering to back him up if he makes Randy Orton number 30 in the Rumble. And Vince goes on this whole tangent on, well, I have security for that. I don't need you to back me up. I have so many security guards. I do not need you out there with me to stop Bret from attacking me if he tries. And he turns down Randy Orton. And then, right after that, the Legacy comes over. Ted DiBiase, Cody Rhodes, black-haired Cody Rhodes, not even brown hair, not dashing Cody Rhodes, black-haired Cody Rhodes comes over. And they're just telling Randy, like, hey, you know how last week you told us that if we lose our matches, we're kicked out of Legacy? Well, we decided that that goes for you too. If you lose your match to Kofi Kingston tonight, you're out of Legacy. And Randy Orton's just standing there silently staring at them, being like, man, they're trying to kick me out of my group. He's standing there just talking to the voices in his head. No one got RKO'd though, so. And then it cuts to Sheamus entering the ring. Well, it did a little scene on what happened last week. John Cena was about to AA Sheamus and win the WWE Championship from him. So this was way back when Sheamus had a WWE title. And John Cena was about to hit the AA on him. So Sheamus grabbed the ref and pushed him to the ground so he'd get disqualified, because when you get disqualified, you lose the match, but titles cannot be swapped without a pinfall or submission. If there's a countout, you don't get it. So, yeah, Sheamus shoved the ref so he could retain his title. So then it cuts to him coming out saying, I defended my title against John Cena last week. I'm not doing it again. I beat him at TLC. Which I'll take his word for it. I'm not going to go back and watch TLC 2009 right now just to see. But Sheamus beat him at TLC 2009, so he's saying, I'm not going to defend my title against John Cena again. And he's saying that he's not going to defend his title till Royal Rumble. And then he's saying, like, Bret Hart was the best there ever was. But as far as it goes for the best there is and the best there ever will be, I am the best there is. I am the best there ever will be. And then Evan Bourne's music hits and he comes out and he ends up being like, you only got that title because you were given an opportunity. And I'm coming out here to demand I get an opportunity. I want a chance to beat you for that championship. And Sheamus is like, you think you could, you of all people think you could beat me? So he ends up being like, let's get a ref in here, let's get this match going. And Sheamus decides if Evan Bourne beats him in this match on Monday Night Raw, he will defend his championship at the Rumble against Evan Bourne. And Sheamus slaps him around 90% of the match. Evan Bourne puts up a little bit of a fight, but it's very one-sided. Sheamus ends up winning. So I don't know who he's going to defend at Royal Rumble. I guess we'll have to wait and see. And then after that, Randy Orton and Kofi's match started, and Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase are sitting ringside. They're not on commentary like The Miz was. They're just sitting in steel chairs watching the match. making sure if Orton loses, they're there to whoop him. And it's a pretty even up match. I forgot how good Kofi used to be. I mean, Kofi's still very good in the ring, but I feel like he was still great when he was Jamaican me crazy, you know? So they end up having a crazy match. Kofi goes for the Trouble in Paradise, but Randy Orton, I almost said Roman Reigns. Randy Orton throws both of his arms up in front of his face and blocks it, and then as Kofi gets up to go for, he just wanted to punch him, I think, and then Randy Orton just pulled out an RKO out of nowhere, got him with it. Was pretty nuts, got the 3 count. And then there's no celebration, there's no reaction from Legacy. It's just Ted DiBiase and Cody Rhodes just staring at each other and then looking at the man that just beat Kofi Kingston, Randy Orton, sitting in the ring and just being like, okay, I guess he did it. I guess we won't jump him now. But they don't look very happy with Orton, even though he won the match, so he's still in. But I guess we'll have to see how that goes, as if nobody knows that they end up having an amazing triple threat. But yeah, Randy Orton ends up winning, so. And then it tried to cut to commercial, but since I was watching it on Peacock Premium, I didn't get an ad. So I just had to watch this screen just jump awkwardly right to Vince McMahon's music, and then he's walking out the weird power walk way Vince McMahon always did. And he comes out and he says that he feels that the Montreal thing, that whole mess, is already behind me. And then he tries to skip past that by saying, next week, the special guest is the Iron Man, Mike Tyson. And he starts hyping up how awesome Mike Tyson is and listing his accomplishments. And then Bret Hart's music comes on, interrupting Vince McMahon mid-rant about how awesome Mike Tyson is. And Vince McMahon says that he thinks Bret screwed himself, and he'll never forget when Bret spit on his face, when Bret sucker punched him after the show that night, when Bret disrespected him when Vince McMahon put him in his Hall of Fame. And Vince kept saying, like, I don't want to patronize you. I don't want this to become a thing. I do want this to be behind us. But I just have to tell you, I think you screwed yourself that night. I don't think that I screwed you. I think your reaction screwed you. But Vince kept saying that he hopes Bret's going to say he's sorry. And he's like, all I want is to hear you say, I'm sorry. And Bret's like, I want this to be behind me too, but what you're saying is not what's going to happen. And Vince kind of strays off what he was doing, and he says Bret would, that, well, I need to stop stuttering, but he starts to talk about how at the first Royal Rumble, no, it was the first WrestleMania that Bret Hart was at. He believed that Bret Hart was going to be a star, that he knew that at that, I guess he said he was in a battle royal. He knew that man wasn't just going to be a tag competitor, but he was going to go on to do great things in singles competition, which he did. He's a 5-time WWE champ. He went on to do amazing things. And he said that at WrestleMania 2, which was Bret Hart's first WrestleMania, he knew amazing things were going to come for that guy, and they did. And Vince goes on to say that he wants, that he's decided that he's going to personally nominate Stu Hart, Bret Hart's dad, for the Hall of Fame that year. So in the 2010 Hall of Fame, he wants to put Stu Hart in. And Vince thanks him for being the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. And Bret Hart's just... I feel like he didn't say much. He was just kind of standing there reacting, being like, okay, this guy. But they end up agreeing that they both want this to be behind them. And Bret Hart said, thanks him for wanting to put his dad in the Hall of Fame. Says, I bet all of the Hart family still in Montreal and up in Canada would really appreciate hearing that from you. And then they shake hands. Vince McMahon takes Bret Hart's hand and puts both of his hands up, and they just keep turning and showing themselves holding hands to every single side of the ring. And I was there being like, what are they doing? Are they just buying time? Why are they taking 2 minutes to just spin in circles looking at the crowd? But it's crazy because Vince McMahon ends up low blowing Bret Hart. Bret Hart flops to the ground. And Vince McMahon stands there looking all cocky for a minute, and then he just walks backstage. But one thing I need to say, it was making me so mad. Vince McMahon came out and his tie was tucked into his pants. I don't know if that's a thing that they do, so it's not flopping around being distracting at this point, but it was really getting on my nerves. I was like, bro, why is the tip of your tie down your pants, bro? It was getting to me. But yeah, Vince McMahon just low blows him after that heartfelt thank you for being the best there was, best there is, best there ever will be, and then just leaves. I feel like that was such a weird way to end it, but it definitely has me being like, does he still hate him? Bret Hart just wanted this to be over, and you punched him in the tag titles, I'll call them for now, you know? I feel like there is so much going on in this episode because I haven't watched an old episode in a long time, but I feel like nowadays you get 3 storylines and then maybe a filler match, which isn't supposed to be a filler match. It'll be a tag title match that has no story behind it, but it's tag titles and Judgment Day's in it, so it's a big deal. I'm telling you that. Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate are definitely going to win those championships, and then they don't. So it felt like so much because it wasn't just Cody Rhodes, Sami Zayn, Seth Rollins, insert whoever the 4th person is constantly fighting the Judgment Day, and that's the only main story anyone cares about. It was literally Bret Hart talking to Vince, Bret Hart talking to Shawn Michaels. It was Michael Cole announcing that there's this women's tournament going on. Miz coming out and cutting a promo on his wife. I don't know if they were married back then, but his current wife now. And then watching a very great fatal 4-way for the #1 contendership. I definitely feel like matches were shorter back then. It definitely felt like everything kind of flew by, which was weird. Weird to me, seeing all these matches just kind of be done so quick. Although, none of these matches were as short as Braun Breaker's was on Friday when I don't even know who it was he beat, but all he did in that match was one spear to him and then pin, and he just won. His SmackDown debut was literally a 5-second match. But yeah, there was so much going on in this. It had me confused. Not confused, but just there's so many things to pay attention and remember, bro. Even I feel like nowadays there would have been a few small things happening, maybe Alpha Academy and Gunther do something, but there would have just been like DX would have been the main event, and that would have been the whole thing. Because normally I feel like they focus on like 2-3 stories at a time, like in an episode. But there is so much happening. I was like, man. But yeah, we're a half hour in. This is the first episode, so I'll let it be a little short. I was planning to pack the first half with talking about current wrestling and getting myself like, but next episode I'll do that where I start off talking about current wrestling and then I'll go into the episode. But to anyone watching the J3mri Wrestle Watch podcast, thanks for watching or listening. Goodbye. Have a nice day.